Welcome to Actionable Intelligence. I'm Eric Greitens. It is an honor to be with you tonight. We've got an outstanding show. First, I want to go right now to Just the News White House correspondent Carrie Sheffield. She's got coverage of the Amistad Project's press conference this afternoon. It featured 3 whistleblowers detailing allegations of what they say is significant voter fraud in several key battleground states. Take a listen here.
Hey there, Eric. Yes, I'm here in Arlington where we just heard a press conference here. You can see the setup from the Amistad Project, which is with the Thomas More Society, and they had some witnesses on stage who were alleging that potentially hundreds of thousands of ballots were affected, possibly fraudulently. They alleged there was a truck driver who worked in Pennsylvania who was alleging that there were ballots that apparently originated in the state of New York and were carried across state lines illegally to then presumably be counted in the state of Pennsylvania when they should not have been counted if they were from another state. There was also a witness who was from Wisconsin who said up to 100,000 ballots were allegedly backdated, that they had been received. This was a subcontractor for the United States Postal Service in Wisconsin who alleged that up to 100,000 ballots were backdated that had been received on November 4th but were backdated to November 3rd in order to make the deadline for Election Day. And running this whole project here is Phil Klein. He joins me now. Phil, what was the biggest takeaway that you want people to get from this event?
Well, that there is substantial evidence of fraud, and the fraud and the evidence is massive. These are eyewitnesses. One of them actually transported the ballots, and the way that the ballots were received in Pennsylvania indicates that there were those who did not want others to know that completed ballots ready for counting moved from New York to Pennsylvania. Hundreds of thousands.
And when you say ready to be counted, they were removed from an envelope, there was no seal, or was there no?
They were all stacked up in bulk mail trays vertically so that it would be easy to carry them into the counting center. And then, in fact, you have eyewitness testimony and photographs of those very same types of trays being inserted into the counting stream in Delaware County on November 5th. So this evidence deserves extensive investigation. Moreover, our witness that spoke about transporting these ballots was corroborated by somebody who actually is up at that postal facility who said this happened multiple times. So you have hundreds of thousands. He carried in one load between 130 to 280,000 ballots into Pennsylvania, and this happened multiple times. It's deeply concerning.
And why is it, just to let our viewers know, why would it be concerning if they would have originated in New York State? Are you saying that these are ballots that were fabricated or originated from voters in New York and were counted in Pennsylvania?
No, if you consider how the ballots would flow through the mail, the legitimate ballot a person would cast and then they would drop it in a mailbox or whatever, and it would never find its way from one state 2 states away. Now, there are some areas where the central processing center along the borders might move it across the state line and back. But we're talking over 200 miles, from New York down to Pennsylvania. And not only that, this postal facility does not receive mail. Where he picked up this load, they have no equipment to process mail. They're not supposed to have this type of mail, and our experts say that's how you insert mail fraudulently into the stream, is you pick a facility like this. And they told us that before we told them this story, and they said, my gosh, that's exactly how you do it. This mail should have never been in New York at that facility, and no ballot should travel from New York to Pennsylvania to be counted, much less hundreds of thousands of them.
So what is your assessment then on how this actually happened? Where did these ballots come from? Are they from actual Pennsylvania voters, or are they from New York voters? I mean, what is your sense on these ballots? And because we're talking upwards of 288,000 ballots, at least in this one truck driver's story, and you said there have been other stories with other truck drivers as well. But in terms of manufacturing cold hundreds of thousands of ballots without detection, how would that have been even possible?
It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. In fact, The ballot design and so forth is in the hands of a lot of private parties. But you have a good question, and the way we answer that question is to get the ballots. You know, I could speculate with you all day. I don't believe that there's any valid reason for a Pennsylvania voter to have, much less hundreds of thousands of their ballots, go up to New York to a postal facility that doesn't process mail to be shipped back to Pennsylvania. So that leads us to the question, how could and why would this happen? And the reason why is if you can complete those ballots and insert them fraudulently, then you could dictate the results of an election. And we have demonstrated in our litigation that there were hundreds, tens of thousands, and in some instances hundreds of thousands of ballots that were not requested, but suddenly were grabbed and voted for others who did not vote. So there you have a pool of ballots you can use. We explained in the news conference how you can easily create persons that don't really exist by using their maiden name or birth names in an area they once lived, cast a vote for them, and you're likely not to be caught. And we have an affidavit that I referred to where they did just that with a woman. And they registered her under her birth name back in her home state that she hasn't lived in over 30 years, and she's never registered under her birth name. So access to the poll books, those types of things, this isn't that difficult to do.
And during this event, the Attorney General Barr did come out and make a statement to the Associated Press saying that he did not see evidence of fraud that would sway the election. Your response to that?
Well, I think that's a premature statement, and I think it's the wrong question. The real question is, do we have evidence of fraud? And the answer is yes. Then the next question is, does it deserve investigation? And the answer is clearly yes.
So, but in terms of AG Barr and getting the information to be subpoenaed or sequestered or to continue any sort of investigation, is this new information from this press conference, do you anticipate that AG Barr might move on this?
Well, I would hope so, but I don't have an anticipation. We just found our responsibility to make this public and let the American people become aware of it, and we intend to pursue the investigation. And I think there's also another question, and the Attorney General probably wasn't asked that, and that is there evidence that would indicate the Supreme Court should invalidate election results? And I believe there is. That's a different question than whether it would change the outcome. The question is this: did we have an integral election where we are confident that the result reflected the will of the people? The answer to that question is no. So what should we do about it?
And I want to turn to Wisconsin, where you had your testimony of the postal worker, the contractor of the Postal Service, who was on stage here, and you said that he's given his testimony over to authorities, and he said that he had 100,000 ballots that he heard from 2 different postal workers that were backdated to meet the deadline. These postal or these ballots apparently, according to his statement, came in very early in the morning. Is there evidence to say, well, they had arrived and they just needed to be counted at that point because they had arrived and it was early in the morning, and arguably they arrived at the facility before midnight?
Well, there's a lot of evidence that indicates that's not the case. And the reason of that is twofold. First of all, the very statements of the people who spoke with him. First, they claimed that he had forgotten ballots when he had not. That was a ruse to be able to say that they suddenly found ballots that were not there and inject them into the process. Secondly, he was told by 2 separate people that the ballots were rounded up on November 4th, which is the day after the election. And the law is clear, they have to be at the counting facility by 8 p.m. on November 3rd. So backdating the ballots is a federal crime. And why would you backdate something and commit a crime if you didn't feel it was necessary? So there's a lot of evidence indicating that this was likely a fraudulent infusion of ballots.
So, and how would you go about proving that, though, that these were backdated? Is there a way for you to prove that they were backdated?
Well, there's a lot of ways. Postal facilities have cameras. There are personnel in postal facilities that need to be asked questions. These type of investigations take time. And when you're looking at a criminal investigation, it takes a longer period of time. That really, this election season, post-election, doesn't allow sufficient time to fully develop that evidence. So again, it's evidence of the wrong question. If you want to convict somebody, I have to prove with the confidence of a unanimous jury that they believe they committed the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not the standard with elections. The standard with elections is really, do the people who have the responsibility of running it and do the people who have the responsibility of reviewing it believe the election was conducted properly? That's the standard. And the answer is no. In fact, there's overwhelming evidence that there were intentional violations of the law by election officials. They admit as much in kicking people out of the counting room and so forth. So those who are considering this should not consider, do we have evidence to convict somebody of fraud? That's the wrong question. Do we have confidence in the way the election was run? And the answer is no.
We'll be back in just 1 minute.